The Hitchhiker. I left home on a Tuesday with $200, a duffel bag, and a scar I'd been carrying ever since I was 5 years old. The scar runs down my right cheek, a faded pink line from the corner of my eye to just above my jaw. Most people are too polite to ask about it. The ones who aren't get a story about a bicycle accident, a fall, a piece of broken glass, something clean, something that doesn't make them look at me with pity or horror, or that particular expression people get when they realize they're talking to someone who was raised by a monster. The truth is simpler and uglier. My father was drunk. I spilled my milk. He grabbed his belt so fast, I didn't even have time to run, and when he swung, the buckle caught me across the face. I remember the sound more than the pain. Metal on bone, a wet crack that echoed in the kitchen. I remember my mother screaming. I remember blood on the linoleum, bright and wrong, and my father's face when he realized what he'd done. He didn't apologize. He never apologized for anything, but he was more careful after that. Hit where the bruises wouldn't show. Learned to break things that could heal without scarring. Until I was old enough to leave. And now I was leaving. 23 years old, everything I owned in the backseat of a car that was barely worth the gas in its tank. No destination, no plan. Just the highway unspooling ahead of me and the rearview mirror showing nothing but distance. For the first time in my life, I was free. I saw the hitchhiker around midnight. The highway had been empty for hours. Nothing but darkness and headlights, and the occasional semi thundering past in the opposite lane. I was tired, running on coffee and adrenaline, but I didn't want to stop. Stopping meant thinking. Thinking meant remembering. And I'd spent 23 years remembering. He was standing on the shoulder, arm out, thumb raised, the classic pose. I could barely see him in the darkness, just a shape, a silhouette against the tree line. I should have driven past. You hear stories, hitchhikers who aren't what they seem, who get in your car and turn into something else once you are miles from anywhere. I knew better, but I also knew what it was like to need help, to be stranded, to have everyone drive past like you weren't even there. I pulled over. He jogged up to the passenger window and I leaned over to roll it down. The dome light was broken, so I couldn't see him clearly. Just the outline of a man, average height, average build, a jacket that looked too thin for the October chill. "Thanks, man." His voice was quiet, tired. "Been out here for hours. Thought I was gonna freeze." "Where you headed?" "Anywhere but here." I almost laughed. "Yeah, I know the feeling." He opened the door and slid into the passenger seat, and I pulled onto the highway without really looking at him. Just another lost soul on a dark road. Just another person running from something. I didn't notice his eyes until we'd been driving for 20 minutes. I glanced in the rearview mirror, habit, checking for cops, then over at him. His eyes were looking right at me, and they were my eyes. The same color, the same shape, the same way the left one squinted slightly when I was tired. I blinked and he blinked, and for a moment I thought I was seeing my own reflection, doubled somehow, split between the mirror and the seat next to me. Then he turned his head, and I saw the scar. Right cheek, faded pink line from the corner of his eye to just above the jaw. The exact shape, the exact position, 18 years healed, but still there, still visible, still telling a story that only one person in the world should be able to tell. My hands tightened on the wheel. "You okay?" he asked. I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. I was looking at my own face, my own scar, my own eyes in someone else's head. "Your cheek," I finally managed. He touched the scar absently, the way I did sometimes when I was thinking. "Oh, this? Bicycle accident when I was a kid." Bullshit. He looked at me then, really looked at me, and something shifted in his expression. The pretense falling away, the lie dissolving, replaced by something older and sadder and more tired than anyone should be. "Yeah, he said quietly. Bullshit. We drove in silence for a while. I should have pulled over, should have demanded answers, should have done something other than grip the steering wheel and stare at the road and try to convince myself that I was dreaming, that I'd fallen asleep at the wheel and this was some kind of exhaustion hallucination. But I didn't stop. Couldn't stop. Some part of me needed to know. You like the Smiths, he said eventually. It wasn't a question. How did you? And you always order your coffee black, but wish you could take it with cream. And you sleep on your left side because your right shoulder never healed right after he threw you down the stairs. And you've never told anyone about the night you almost killed yourself, the night after prom when everyone was celebrating and you were sitting in your car with the engine running and the garage door closed. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it. Who the fuck are you? He smiled. It was my smile, the sad one, the one I made when I was trying not to cry. You know who I am. You've known since you saw the scar. That's not possible. A lot of things aren't possible, and yet... He reached over and turned off the radio. I hadn't even realized it was on, some staticky country station I'd been using for background noise. The silence was sudden, complete, just the hum of the engine and the whisper of tires on asphalt. I'm going to tell you something, he said, and you're not going to believe me, but that's okay. You don't have to believe me. You just have to listen. I killed a man tonight. The words hung in the air between us. I waited for him to laugh, to say he was joking, to break the tension with some kind of punchline. He didn't. Just up the road a ways, not quite sure how far. I've been walking for what feels like forever. He came out of nowhere, walking on the shoulder, dark clothes, no reflectors. I didn't even see him until it was too late. That's not... I hit him going 65. He went over the hood, over the roof, landed in the ditch, dead before I even got out of the car. He paused, looked out the window at the darkness. I stood there for a long time just looking at him, waiting to feel something. Guilt, horror, something. And nothing. I felt nothing. Just relief. Like I'd been waiting my whole life to do something terrible, and now I'd finally done it, and it was over. I was shaking. I could feel it in my hands, in my shoulders, in the way my foot kept wanting to press the accelerator instead of the brake. Why are you telling me this? He turned to look at me, my eyes, my scar, my face, a decade older, a lifetime more broken. Because you need to know what you're going to become. Because you think you're escaping him, escaping that house, escaping the violence that lives in your blood, but you're not. You can't. It's part of you. It's always been part of you. No. You have his hands, his temper, his capacity for cruelty. You've felt it, haven't you? The rage that comes out of nowhere, the urge to break things, hurt things. You've spent your whole life pushing it down, pretending it's not there. But it is. And one day, tonight actually, it's going to come out. Get out! I didn't mean to scream. The sound tore out of me like something alive, and I was already pulling onto the shoulder, spraying gravel, the car fishtailing before I got it under control. Get out of my fucking car! He didn't argue, didn't fight, just nodded slowly, like he'd expected this, like he remembered it. He opened the door, stepped out into the darkness, turned back to look at me one last time. I'll see you again, he said, soon. He closed the door. I peeled out so fast the tires screamed. I drove for an hour without stopping. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. My mind kept replaying the conversation, searching for the trick, the explanation, the rational reason why a stranger would know things about me that I'd never told anyone. Twins separated at birth, some kind of con artist who'd researched me somehow. Anything but what he'd said. But the scar, the exact scar. The buckle had caught me at a specific angle, left a specific shape, A wound that was mine and mine alone. No one could fake that. I was exhausted, wired and exhausted, my eyes burning, my thoughts spiraling. I needed to calm down, needed to think. I reached for my cigarettes, shook one out of the pack, fumbled with the lighter, looked down for just a second, just 1 second. The impact was like nothing I'd ever felt. Something hit the hood, heavy, solid, alive, and then the windshield was cracking, and the car was spinning, and I was screaming, hands locked on the wheel, foot slamming the brake too late, always too late. The world became sound, metal shrieking, glass shattering, my own voice raw and wordless. And then silence. The car had come to rest in a ditch, tilted at an angle, the engine ticking in the sudden quiet. I was alive. I didn't know how, but I was alive. The airbag had deployed, white and chemical smelling, slowly deflating against my chest. I pushed my way out of the car, stood on the shoulder, looked back. The man was lying in the road, dark clothes, no reflector. He'd come out of nowhere, walking on the shoulder, invisible in the darkness. He wasn't moving. I walked toward him on legs that didn't feel like mine, knelt beside him, checked for a pulse I knew I wouldn't find. Dead. He was dead. I'd killed him. Going 65, over the hood, over the roof, into the ditch, just like he'd said. I don't know how long I stood there. Time had stopped making sense. The night was cold and silent and vast, and I was alone on a road in the middle of nowhere with a body at my feet and blood on my hands. I needed help, needed to call someone, needed to get back to the road, flag someone down. I started running, back the way I'd come, back toward the highway, my feet pounding the gravel shoulder, my breath ragged in my chest. I ran until my lungs burned and my legs gave out, and then I walked. For what felt like hours, I walked, just putting one foot in front of the other, the night pressing in on all sides, the darkness so complete I could barely see the road beneath my feet. And then, headlights, coming from the direction I'd been driving, a car approaching slowly, pulling onto the shoulder just ahead of me. I recognized the car. I recognized the dent in the front fender, the shape of the driver silhouetted behind the wheel. It was my car. The window rolled down. I saw my own face looking at me, 23 years old, a scar on my right cheek, and a lifetime of violence I thought I was leaving behind. He saw a stranger on the side of the road, arm out, thumb raised, a hitchhiker in need of help. Need a ride? I looked at him, at me, at the face I'd worn an hour ago, a lifetime ago, before everything changed. I knew what came next. I knew what I had to say. I knew that this moment had already happened, would always happen, was happening right now and forever. I opened the door, slid into the passenger seat. The car pulled onto the highway. My younger self checked the rearview mirror, then glanced over at me, and I saw the moment he noticed my eyes. "You okay?" he asked. I touched the scar on my cheek. "Yeah," I said. "Just tired. Been out here for hours." We drove in silence, and somewhere up ahead, a man was walking on the shoulder in dark clothes, waiting to die. And somewhere behind us, a man was lying in a ditch, already dead. And the loop had no beginning, and the loop had no end. And I understood now what my father had known all along. Violence isn't something you do, it's something you are. And there's no road long enough to outrun yourself.